Hi, I'm Micaela Schweitzer-Bluhm. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting, which publishes the Maine Monitor. And I am very excited to be joined today by Naomi Shalit, who, along with her husband, John Christie, founded the Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting in 2009. Naomi and John are in Hallowell today, where it all started. And so she offered to spend some time with me to talk about some of the origins of the Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting and one very special way that Naomi used to recognize and thank the supporters that helped the center grow and start. So Naomi, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
That's wonderful.
So we're here in Hallowell at the Hallowell Multicultural Center, which is really lovely. You started the Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting not far from here. Tell me, what were you and John thinking, and why did you decide to found a nonprofit investigative news organization for Maine?
So there really was a public service impulse to found the center. It was John's idea to start with. I joined him pretty quickly in thinking about this. He became the first employee. And I joined a few months after that. First story was done by him. But the idea behind it was, I had spent 20 years in the State House as a reporter for different organizations, and found that when I started, and by that time the number of reporters covering state government in Maine was really diminished. And really, what is reporting at its most elemental? It's holding government accountable. That's why you need reporters, not for lifestyles or recipes or feature stories, but really performing the role of journalism in a democracy, which is to hold government accountable. And government had been getting away with a lot of stuff for a lot of decades. So this was very early in the period when nonprofits were starting. ProPublica had just started up. There was one more, I think, in Wisconsin, and another maybe in Colorado, and another in Minnesota. So we were really in on that first wave of, oh my God, the news business has gone to hell. The coverage of really important things has diminished to a level where people don't have the information they need to be good citizens. And so we thought, let's do it. And we brought in a bunch of people to help us. Our incorporation papers were signed at our kitchen table with Mary Mayo, who was a fundraiser, a former journalist herself down in York, and who thoroughly supported our idea and joined in a shot of whiskey with us once we signed the papers.
So in those early days, you said you brought in a bunch of people, but who was really on the day-to-day, who was running the organization, who was doing the investigations and the reporting?
That was John and me. And we were, you'd like to think that running a journalism organization is just going out and doing stories. No, you need a website, which means in your 50s, you need to learn how to write code. You need to work on relations with other news organizations, because fundamental to our concept of the center was that it would give away its content for free.
Something we still do.
You do, because that's the public service mission. Also, people don't pay much for journalism anymore. They're not buying papers. They want to go on their websites and get everything for free. And we thought, what can we do with the experience that both of us have had to help journalism in Maine really still do what it's supposed to do? So we started with a small board. I'm trying to remember all the people who joined us, but I will say probably besides Mary, one of the most important people on that board was Jed Davis, who has stayed devoted to this organization for, a dozen years? It's extraordinary. We pulled in some people eventually to help us do fundraising. It was not easy to do fundraising in the state of Maine because it wasn't something that philanthropy had done before. In fact, it was the families that owned the papers that did the philanthropy themselves. So that was a many-year process of getting them used to doing this. I will say that we got support almost immediately from some national journalism foundations, the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation, which was a foundation funded by newspaper family in Oklahoma, and they were funding groups like ours across the country, and they were extraordinary in their devotion to, it wasn't one and done, they stuck with us. Same thing with the Nicholas B. Ottaway Foundation. John had worked for Ottaway newspapers, had that connection, and Jim Ottaway and his board kept going with their support and general support, which is the kind of support you really need.
Yeah.
So, the two of us were employees. I don't think John ever took a salary. I took a salary after maybe a year, and it was 24/7 for quite a few years.
Well, and what you did was incredible. You really built a reputation and produced some reporting that caught people's attention.
Yeah, we pissed off a lot of people. After 30 years, essentially one-party rule in the State House, there was a lot of low-hanging fruit to go after. And it was a kind of reporting that you had not really seen that much of in Maine. And we developed a wonderful internship program with Columbia Journalism School, where they paid for an intern to come spend the summer with us. And we did this 2 or 3 years in a row where they lived with us. So they actually had journalism 24/7 themselves. And those journalists are now at, I think, Business Insider, the Chronicle of Higher Education, and one of them was an AP reporter in the State House in New York State. So our reporters, our interns, people who worked with us did a great job and moved on to, we didn't spoil journalism for them. They got excited.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I think that's still the feeling that inspires all the reporters in our newsroom today is they're really excited about doing in-depth reporting, investigating, holding organizations, the government, institutions accountable. So those same feelings and motivations are still what drive the newsroom. And we had another intern from Columbia this summer, Amanda Gould. Yeah, she came to us through a partnership with Columbia and the NINN, the Institute for Nonprofit.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
did she live with you?
She did not live with me. No, she did not.
You haven't done journalism until you've lived with the intern in their bathrobe, or they've lived with you in your bathrobe. It was always very nice, but they also had escape hatches on the weekends of friends to go visit.
Well, Naomi, you were really fortunate in the early days to have some really dedicated supporters who saw the value of what you and John were trying to do and who donated to keep the organization in business, to keep it growing. And I want to talk to you about one thing that you did to thank them in a really special way, which was to make what you call Journalism Jam. So I wonder if you could tell us, what is Journalism Jam?
I wish I had the little label we put on each jar, but it basically said Journalism Jam. It was the definition of it, and it was a sweet and tart condiment to use on poultry with pork or on cheddar cheese, especially. That was definition 1. Definition 2 was something you don't want to get into as a journalist. So this was, I have a lot of identities. I'm a journalist, certainly, but I'm a mom, I'm a writer, I'm a gardener, and I'm also a cook. And the way I really sort of spread my love and appreciation is through cooking. And, we thought, tote bags, hats, it was also Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting. It was a little much to do that. So we thought one day, let's jar up this jam and give it to our best donors. I think Maddie Corson, God bless her, one of our best supporters, was the first person we gave it to. And it turned into, the first few years I did it in our kitchen at home. It kind of got out of hand by the last year that I did it, where we had 100 jars. Basically, if you gave it a certain level, or we loved you enough even if you didn't, you got a jar of jam. And we usually gave it before Thanksgiving so that you could use it for your Thanksgiving dinner. We didn't want it was not a token after you gave a gift. It wasn't give a gift and we'll give you a jar of jam. It came towards the end of the year as really a thank you for everything that you had helped us do during the year. And it was a lot of fun. I did it ultimately with the help of Hildy Lipson, who was doing fundraising for us and managing our list and was a wonderful person to have work with us. And then the last year when we had to do 100, we literally rented a commercial kitchen in Somerville and went over there and made 100 jars. And our friend up the street, Jane Orbiton, came and helped us with the canning of that. And at that point, I'm pretty sure that was when I stopped running the organization. We turned it over to somebody else, and I thought they can make the jam now.
Well, tell me, where did you find the recipe, and tell us what goes into the recipe?
It's in a cookbook whose name I cannot remember now, except that it started with Mrs. Witty's. And my bound copy of that cookbook, the back is broken. You open it, it opens automatically to this page. You can barely read what's on the page because there's so many splashes of cranberry. And it has cranberries. I used to go up to Belfast to the co-op because they had local cranberries and they were terrific. It has an orange in it in the recipe. I always use tangerine. It has orange juice in it instead of the water. It just made it a little stronger. And the secret, besides sugar, is cardamom. And it's that wonderful scent of mostly Swedish food, I'd say, but also Indian, that really elevates this. And it's called a conserve because I called it journalism jam. It's really technically a conserve. It's baked in the oven. And the cranberries, you try to get them so that they don't burst. They just become translucent. And you can eat it in the morning on toast, or you can eat it, as we mostly do, with cheddar cheese and crackers, or with the Thanksgiving turkey. I will say that my children insist on having the cranberry stuff that comes out of the can that has lines on it when you push it out of the can. But they're in their 30s, so they haven't grown out of that.
Well, today we have not only over 9,000 readers of the Maine Monitor newsletters.
Be still my heart.
But we have over 1,100 active donors supporting our work and continuing to allow us to grow and do more reporting for Maine, which thank you. So it would be a little challenging for me to make 1,100 jars of jam. So I hope you'll forgive me. I'm not going to be making jam, but we're going to share the recipe with everybody, so you can try it at home yourself. I'm going to try it.
And if anybody has trouble, put them in touch with me. I'll talk them through it.
You heard that. If you have trouble, Naomi will talk you through it. Are there any tips that you think that people should keep in mind if they decide to try and make this journalism jam?
It's really easy.
Okay.
The tip is don't use oranges, use tangerines. Don't use water, use tangerine juice.
Okay.
But it's just as good with oranges and water. I just like that slightly different taste of tangerines.
Okay. Well, I hope that you will try it. And if you do, post some comments here. Let us know or send us emails. Share with Naomi and me how it went and what you've decided you like to use it for. Do you use it with your turkey? Are you saving it for Christmas ham? Are you putting it on toast in the morning? Let us know what you do with your journalism jam.
Or do you just eat it with a spoon?
That too. I mean, I love cranberries, so I'm one of those that just eats things with my spoon. But so, Naomi, I want to thank you so much.
This is fun.
Not only for coming to Hollowell and for spending some time talking to me about the origins of the Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting and our publication, the Maine Monitor, but also sharing with us about Journalism Jam and some of the special things that you did to start building that community of supporters that's still with us today. And I also want to thank you and John for having the idea of creating this organization to begin with. It is really important. All the reasons that you outlined are vital reasons still today for having the kind of investigative, in-depth, nonprofit news that we do. It is a public service, and that is really what motivates us. So I want to say thank you. I'm excited to be part of this organization and carry on the work that you started.
Well, it's kind of like watching your kids grow up, and then you look at them at a certain point and say, wow. So I say wow when I look at you, so does John, and we really are in awe of how you've taken the center and pushed it further and further and further into doing the good work that it's doing now.
Well, thank you, and I know the newsroom appreciates that feedback too. They really love what they do. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking the time to watch this, and we look forward to hearing how it goes with your journalism jam.